In this video, we're going to talk about how to write systems of equations given graphs and tables. So let's review by practicing how to write linear equations. Let's write a linear equation that contains the points in the following table. Remember that we write linear equations in y equals mx plus b form. Remember that in y equals mx plus b, which is slope-intercept form, that m equals the value of the slope and b equals the value of the y-intercept. So we're going to need to figure out those two values before we can write the equation of the line. So remember, when we have a bunch of points, we need to start off by calculating the slope. Remember that slope is given by the formula m equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So we need to pick 2 points that are in this table to be x1, y1 and x2, y2. So I'm going to pick these first 2 points that are right here. So I'm going to call this x1 and then y1, because remember x1 and y1 have to go together. And I'm going to call this point x2 and y2. So when I plug into this equation, I have y2, which is negative 7, minus y1, which is negative 9, divided by x2, which is negative 2, minus x1, which is negative 3. So I used all the values that I labeled and just plugged in directly to the formula. So now I have a bunch of minus negatives that I want to simplify. Remember, minus negative will become a plus. So I have negative 7 plus 9, which is 2, over negative 2 plus 3, which is 1. So 2 over 1 equals 2, and that is my value of m. So now I need to figure out the value of b, because remember, I need 2 pieces to write the equation of a line in slope-intercept form. I need the slope and I need the y-intercept. So now I'm just going to pick one of the points that's in my table. Since I've already labeled it, I'm just going to pick the first point, negative 3, negative 9, and I'm going to call that x, y. So I'm going to go back to y equals mx plus b, and I'm going to plug in the numbers that I have. I have x, y, and I also have m equals 2, which is what I just solved. So I'm going to plug into this formula, so I get negative 9 equals 2 times negative 3 plus b. So when I plug this in, I get negative 9 equals 2 times negative 3, which is negative 6, plus b. Now to solve for b, I'm going to add 6 to both sides. So when I add 6 to both sides, I get negative 3 equals b. So my equation is now based on this b and this m. So I have the equation y equals 2x minus 3. That is the equation of the line that represents the points in this table. So remember, we can also write linear equations based on a graph. Once again, we need the same information. If we're writing the equation in y equals mx plus b form, we need to figure out the value of m and the value of b. So m is the slope. Remember that the slope is also known as the rise over the run. So remember, when you're talking about slope, you want to kind of look at the graph and predict what kind of slope it's going to have. So based on the shape of this graph, I can see that it goes down as I go left to right. So I know that it's going to be a negative slope. So I'm going to pick 2 points on the line and count the rise over run going from left to right to figure out the slope. So I'm going to pick 0, 5, and 3, 3. So I can see from going left to right, I go down 2, so that's minus 2. And then I go right, 1, 2, 3. So my rise over run will be negative 2 over 3. And now I need to figure out the value of b. Well, b, remember, is the y-intercept. So I can look at this graph and see that it crosses the y-axis at 5. So that means my value of b is equal to 5. So the equation of this line will be y equals negative 2/3 x plus 5. So you already know how to do this. You already know how to write the equation of a line based on a graph or based on a table. Well, writing systems of equations will require the same skills. The only difference is we're going to do everything twice because remember, in a system of equations, we have 2 equations, right? Because we have 2 lines. So let's practice writing systems given a table. So remember, we're going to need to calculate the slope. And then you're going to pick a point and plug the slope and the point into either slope-intercept or point-slope form. And then you're going to repeat these steps for the second table to write the equation of the second line. So here's what I'm talking about. The tables of ordered pairs represent some points on the graphs of lines M and P. Write a system of equations that is represented by lines M and P. So what's very important here is you want to work with one line at a time. Okay, so I'm going to start off with line M. Okay, so I'm going to do all my work with line M, and then I'm going to worry about line P. So for line M, once again, I need to use my slope formula. So my slope equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. I need to once again pick 2 points. So I'm going to call this x1 and y1, and then this point x2 and y2. Okay, so when I plug in, I get y2, which is 1, minus y1, which is negative 3, over x2, which is negative 1, minus x1, which is negative 3. So when I simplify this, the 1 minus negative becomes a plus. The negative 1 minus negative becomes plus also. So I have 1 plus 3, which is 4, over negative 1 plus 3, which is 2. So 4 divided by 2 equals 2, which is my value of M. So now I'm going to pick one of these points and then use the point and the slope to write the equation of the line. So the point I'm going to pick, I'm just going to pick the first point, negative 3, which gives me an x value and a y value. Once again, remember I have M equals 2. So when I write the equation of my line, I have y equals mx plus b. So that means I have negative 3 equals 2 times negative 3 plus b. So I have negative 3 equals negative 6 plus b. And I can solve this equation by adding 6 to both sides. So when I do that, I get negative 3 plus 6, which is 3, equals b. So now based on this b value and this m value, I have y equals 2x plus 3. That is the equation of line M. Now I'm going to work on line P. I'm going to use a different color just so you can see my work. So now I'm going to work on line P. So here is my table. So when I work on line P, I need to start off once again by calculating the slope. So I'm going to pick 2 points. So I have x1, y1, and x2, y2. So I have y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So y2 is negative 4 minus y1, which is negative 9, over x2, which is 1, minus x1, which is negative 4. So negative 4 minus negative 9 will become plus, and then 1 minus negative 4 will also become plus. So negative 4 plus 9 is 5, over 1 plus 4, which is 5. So 5 divided by 5 equals 1. That is my value of M. So now I'm going to pick a point. I'm going to pick negative 4, negative 9, and that is my x value and my y value that I'm going to plug into y equals mx plus b, along with the slope of 1. So I have y, which is negative 9, equals m, which is 1, times x, which is negative 4, plus b. So I have negative 9 equals 1 times negative 4, which is negative 4, plus b. So now I'm going to add 4 to both sides to solve for b. So when I do that, I get negative 9 plus 4, which is negative 5, equals negative 4 and plus 4 cancel. So I have negative 5 equals b. So I have y equals 1, which is my slope, 1x minus 5. So finally, if I'm going to write this system of equations, I'm going to write, let's see, my system will be this first equation, this y equals 2x plus 3. And my second equation will be y equals 1x minus 5, the second equation right here. So that is my system of equations that is represented by this table. So notice that each line has to be written individually in order to write the system of equations. So what if we're writing systems given a graph? So once again, we're going to use the same idea we did when we're writing just one equation. You're going to count the slope using rise over run, then use the slope and the y-intercept to write the equation in y equals mx plus b form. If you can't find the y-intercept, you're going to have to use another point on the line and then write the equation in point-slope form. Repeat these steps for the second line. So remember, the important equations that we need are the slope formula, the y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1, slope-intercept form, the y equals mx plus b, And then point slope form, if you're using it, the y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So let's write the system of equations that's represented by this graph. So this graph in green, okay, I'm going to write it in y equals mx plus b form. So notice that in green, my y-intercept is here at 1. So that means my value of b is 1. Now let's figure out the slope. So my second point on the line is down here at 2, negative 2. So if I count slope, I go down 1, 2, 3. So that's negative 3. And then I go right 1, 2. So that's plus 2. So my slope, m, is going to be negative 3 over 2. So my first equation is going to be y equals negative 3 over 2x plus 1. Now let's write the equation of the second line in blue. So notice that it has a y-intercept of negative 3. So if I go here, there's my y-intercept at negative 3. So if it's in y equals mx plus b form, my b equals negative 3. My slope is going to be, let's see, going from left to right, I go right 1, 2, so that's plus 2, and I go up 1, which is plus 1. So m, which is my rise over run, equals 1/2. So if I write this equation, it's going to be y equals 1/2 x plus negative 3, which is y equals 1/2 x minus 3. So if I write these two equations together, if I write y equals negative 3 over 2x plus 1 and y equals 1/2 x minus 3, that is my system of equations that is represented on this graph. So let's write the system of equations that's represented by this graph. So I'm going to write the equation of the line in blue first. So once again, I'm going to go to my y equals mx plus b form. My y-intercept is at 2. So that means that my value of b is 2. My slope, I'm going to determine using 2 points. So here's the second point. So going left to right, I go right 1, 2, 3. So that's plus 3. And then I go up 1, so that's plus 1. So m is rise over run, which equals 1 over 3. So my equation will be y equals 1/3 x plus 2. So now let's write the equation of the second line, the one that's in green. So when we write the equation of this line, we're going to once again figure out the y-intercept. So the y-intercept is at 2. So for y equals mx plus b, b is going to equal 2. And then my slope, I'm going to determine using this second point right here. So as I go left to right, I go down 1, which is minus 1. And I go right 1, 2, so that's plus 2. So my m, which is my rise over run, is going to be negative 1 over 2. So my second equation is going to be y equals negative 1/2 x plus 2. So when I write these two equations together, y equals negative 1/3 x plus 2 and y equals negative 1/2 x plus 2, that is now my system of equations that is represented on this graph. So remember, to write systems of equations from tables and graphs, you'll have to write the equations of both lines separately. First, you'll calculate the slope of the equation, and then use the slope and the y-intercept or another point on the line to write the equation. You'll have to repeat these steps to write the second equation in the system.